the Trump presidency. And the contrast on display tonight was so stark. I mean, those lights that are just shooting out from the Lincoln Memorial along the reflecting pool, it's like almost extensions of Joe Biden's arms embracing America. It was a moment where the new president came to town and sort of convened the country in this moment of remembrance, outstretching his arms.
Question that what the whole country needs to focus on in terms of our elections is making sure that we have some effective electoral reform. Nobody wants to wait a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which happened in some of the House races, to get election results. We need to work on that and make the system better for 2022. But this election was not stolen. All of the facts point in that direction. And I'm a former prosecutor, George. I make decisions based upon evidence, not based upon feelings or partisanship or loyalty. You make those decisions based upon evidence. And the evidence here has shown right from the beginning that while every election has some irregularities, and I'm sure this one did too, there were no type of irregularities that would have changed the result in any one state, let alone the 4 states that would need to have been changed for the result of the election have been changed. And folks in my party who are doing that, quite frankly, are just trying to make political points with those people who the president and others lied to about this over the course of the 10 weeks after the election. And it's shameful that they're doing it.
That even for a guy that's this cynical, he'd back off a little bit. But I will say this. I've met a lot of people that have gone to Ivy League schools that are just stupid.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not being anti-intellectual. I've met a lot of people that have gone to Ivy League schools that are smart. This guy's just being stupid as hell, and he's a seditionist. He should be kicked out of the United States Senate.
I wrote down a few things that I think we need to do to defend our republic and breathe new life into it. Fix the voting systems that were unconstitutionally changed by the Democrats in the battleground states. That's up to the Republican state legislatures. Primary any and all Republicans who have participated in or will participate in this Salem witch trial, this unconstitutional act against former President Trump, and those who seek to censure or otherwise silence Senators Cruz and Hawley. The left and certain Republicans don't get to decide who we choose as our leaders and who we choose as our president next time around.
Welcome. You're in the War Room in Occupy, D.C. It's Tuesday, the 20th of January. Oh, excuse me. Is it the 20th?
26th.
26th.
All day.
God, all day. 26th of January, year of our Lord 2021. That 20th is just kind of a day that rattles in my brain. Okay, John Frederick's Radio Network, Real America's Voice, Dish Channel 219, Comcast Channel 113, and on every platform that is out there and known to man, except for YouTube. We got a packed
and Spotify, to be fair.
And Spotify. we got a packed. By the way, over significantly north of 30 million downloads now. And by the way, Business Insider, when you do a story, just go click onto the Apple. So lazy. The journalism is so lazy and so stupid. You can see, first of all, it's not streams, it's downloads. And just go to the sites, and you can see where it says, I think, 32 million downloads today.
Oh, I got them to change the story as well.
Oh, you did? Okay,
I did.
good.
They had to issue a correction. I sent them a very strongly worded letter that I'm not a guest, I'm a co-host.
Co-host? Did they say you're a guest at first?
Yeah.
You work like a guest, but you're actually
That's
a co-host.
true.
You're paid like
I get as much time to talk as a guest.
You're paid like a host and work like a guest. Okay, speaking of guests, we got so much to get through today. I want to bring in the great Phill Kline from the Amistad Project at the Thomas More Society. Phill, thank you for joining us today. This is a day of victory begets victory. We're going to talk about the amnesty bill collapsing. We're going to talk about the filibuster staying in place. Victory begets victory. Phill, before I get to H.R. 1, which everybody's got to get focused on, and Raheem is actually doing a lot of work on this, I got to ask you about the president's defense. You were one of the guys, you heard the cold open, Chris Christie saying you're all a bunch of liars, there's nothing there. And by the way, Chris, do the math. It's not 4 states, it's 3 states. Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona would take you below 270. And those are the 3 low-hanging fruit. Phill Kline, just to respond to that, was this predicated on a bunch of lies or a bunch of, and I want to leave the Dominion voting system because I've said from day one that's a much deeper investigation. I think it's got to take place by actual authorities, both at the state level, where you're seeing it in Arizona, or at the county level, where you're seeing it in Michigan. But just the low-hanging fruit of the voter fraud, the ballot fraud, and the election fraud overall. Was this predicated on just those three verticals, absent the machines? Was this enough? Was this a pack of lies, like Chris Christie said? Is he smearing you?
Well, he's actually saying that the Democrat local elected officials who admitted they engaged in illegalities, they tried to justify them, but they set aside state law. They operated the election according to how Mark Zuckerberg ordered them to, with his $400 million plus. And what Chris Christie is saying is that they are lying in admitting the illegalities, and that we shouldn't look at this. It's always remarkable to me as a former prosecutor when somebody resists at all efforts to take a look to see what happened. And that's what the left's doing, and unfortunately Chris Christie, out of ignorance or out of a desire for his own personal political gain, has decided that he's going to play along.
It's not personal political gain. It's not ignorance either. He's playing along because he wants to be the one of the Washington generals of the mainstream media once that contract at ABC. Okay, I want to go to, by the way, the president's defense. Are you an advocate of doing what it looks like they're doing and just to kind of argue some technical aspects of due process? Or do you believe it behooves the president, the Trump movement, and the nation to actually have a full-throated defense where you actually go through the receipts in Wisconsin, in Georgia, in Arizona, in Nevada, Michigan, in Pennsylvania? Would you? What of the two versions would you argue for, Phill Kline?
Well, let me put it this way. I firmly believe that this nation must be strong enough to engage in a look at the hard questions and look at the evidence that has come forward. Now, I would also say that the impeachment trial might not be the best forum for that because of how the rules are set and because of how it is limited in time. So with that, I would say that whatever the president can do, or President Trump can do, to bring this issue before the American people, that is helpful. But I don't believe the forum of impeachment is the strongest forum for which we should take a look at it.
What other form? What other form? If he doesn't present it in the impeachment trial in the Senate, no matter what the time is, if he took 4 or 5 days and went through one state per day, if you don't do it there, give me another. This is where you could adjudicate it in a actual trial. Tell me where else you're going to do it in one fell swoop.
I think there are a couple of things happening. First of all, we have our ongoing litigation related to the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and we're going to push forward with discovery and take those cases to trial so we learn how the Zuckerberg money was given, how it was strategized, how it dictated how local elections would be run, and what the impact of those dictates were. So we plan to do that. Additionally, I believe state legislatures. We're in contact with state legislators across the nation who want to take a serious look.
Phill, I understand that, and I get it. You got Maricopa County, you got the state legislature is going through the system. You still got court cases all over the place. You're aggressive, but that's all disparate elements that could pull together the big picture maybe in a year or two. I'm talking about today, one place. Tell me one venue where Phill Kline and Rudy and these other people, Smith down in Georgia, the great lawyer out in Nevada, Troupas in Wisconsin. Tell me one venue where you're going to be able to present to the American people so in their common sense they go, wow, I didn't know that about Wisconsin. Wow, I didn't know that about Georgia. You're talking about disparate lawsuits and state legislatures spread over multiple years to get to something of when people go, well, gosh, that really was, if I tie it all together, that's really important back in 2020. But give me another venue you can do today that's actually a legal venue to do this.
Well, Steve, I think you answered your own question the way that you defined the question. So let me say, I don't disagree that the impeachment trial has national attention, will have national media, and could raise the level of interest in this today. But I also believe that this is going to take a long-term effort. The Democrats started these changes after Bush v. Gore, and our vision needs to be as long. Now, let me add this. We have to take action before 2022. And we have to continue to put pressure on Congress to do the right things and not institutionalize what they've done wrong.
I got it, but if you don't, I'm a big believer. It's like confronting the Biden administration. The radicalists right now, to me, you take it on. The wound of 2003 is not going to heal until we have a national reconciliation And the way you do that is you start in the Senate trial. I just totally disagree with the strategy that's being pursued. But hey, there's a lot I disagree with the people do. Okay, I want to
of the movement. You go right to the enemy, and then you go right through the middle. And there is a need for that. I'm just saying that our vision and our long-term effort needs to look at changing locally. That's where it is. We have to stop nationalizing issues. Stop it and go local.
Raheem, I want you to jump in. Let's go to HR1. Everybody out there in the posse, we're getting you ahead of the curve on things you got to start thinking about. Let's go to HR1. Raheem Kassam.
Yeah, Phil, I think the sentiment's also correct. I mean, there's a reason that the politicians and the media nationalize every single story, and I think the sentiment's correct about how much they want to pull power away and even stories and interest levels away from a local level. And on that note, let's talk about another national story that's big in here in our laps, and that is HR1. And HR1, according to Esquire magazine in the last 24 hours, they say if we don't pass HR1, we are effed as a nation. I would suggest that it's quite the opposite. But Phil, for the people that don't know out there, in sort of 30 seconds, what is HR1?
Well, first of all, it's an admission by the left that they engaged in illegalities this election. What HR1 would do is codify all of the strangeness the left brought to the 2020 presidential election and spread it nationally like a virus. It would require every state to allow for full-scale ballot harvesting. It would increase the public-private partnerships between left 501c3s and government such that they would control the technology that printed ballots, that determined barcodes, that counted the ballots, and also allowed for the printing of ballots at home by individuals, which then can be harvested. It's getting our public schools with financial incentives to teach children how to vote, and then move the age down lower to the age of 16 so that they are voting in these public schools. It is the left's effort to create one-party rule through radicalizing our elections.
Let me ask you this question, Phil, because it strikes me, I mean, it's called the For the People Act, and when they poll this piece of legislation, what they tell the people surveyed is this is a piece of legislation that would take corruption and big corporate money out of politics and increase transparency. Do you support this? And of course, 80% of people say, yes, I support this. But then if you start drilling down into what exactly is within HR1, in addition to what you were just talking about there, it is fundamentally a direct assault on the U.S. Constitution. It challenges Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, which is that the states get to decide their own rules. So is this actually constitutional, and would it stand up to a Supreme Court challenge?
Well, I don't think. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to dangle the dollar bill, and that's how they're going to get states to adopt the rules that they are requiring. And in that sense, it will stand up because they are not saying states, you must do this even if you don't accept federal money. So they're bribing the states. And unfortunately...
So it's CTCL writ large?
Yes, by
it's
government.
CTCL,
and then also, Raheem, it invites in these 501cs because they're the ones developing the technology.
Phil, let's take a break.
Yeah, hey, Phil, hang over through the break. I want to get into more, do a deeper dive here. The great Phill Kline from the Amistad Project, Thomas More Society, one of the great fighters on the front line. We're going to take a short commercial break. And I know I can't get. I guess Phill Kline does agree with me that we got in the Senate. It becomes part of the permanent record, as the posse tells us in the live chat. Short commercial break. Back with Phill Kline and also Numbers USA next about the amnesty bill on War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
See, you complain enough about not being given airtime, and suddenly you get to bring the show back. Welcome back to the War Room. I'm Raheem Kassam. I've got my co-host, my co-pilot, Stephen K. Bannon.
We always listen to the workers.
Got Phill Kline joining us down the line. Phil, I want to get more through this HR1 with you real quick because there's more to it than just what you were talking about there, the assault on Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, the idea that states get to make their own rules, as you say. They're going to be induced financially very heavily to change those. Also in this, I think, a 15-day mandatory early voting period is what they're talking about here. You have automatic voter registration, vote by mail, turning voting day into a federal holiday. Now, there are some parts of this bill that I suppose are actually quite good, and Republicans would support parts of the election security portion of this bill, for instance, that are interesting. But then you get even further into it, and you see, and specifically what really disturbs me, is some of the rules around the federal district and D.C. statehood. And particularly when you look at what we've lived through here on Capitol Hill for the last couple of weeks, the Green Zone. H.R. 1 actually specifically talks about making the Capitol complex, the National Mall, and the White House a completely separate federal district, and then having the rest of Washington, D.C. as a full state. Phill, tell us more.
Unconstitutional, and I think there's a good argument to forward that. But also, I would say this, that would be the state for the Federal Employees Union. That's all that state would be. There's no suburban area. There's no, rural area. It would be the only state without a rural interest whatsoever. And then dominantly, it's the Federal Employee Public Union would get 2 United States senators. And I want to mention one other thing in the bill, Raheem, and that is that this bill, it criminalizes criticism of the bill, of the way that the elections would be managed. It calls that misinformation and would criminalize criticism. It is stunning. The left's design for America is a one-party system.
Okay, here's what we got to do, because you see the tech oligarchs in it. How do people get more? You got your article up on Real Clear Politics. We're putting that in the live chat. Also, we're going to have it on all the sites. National Pulse will have it up. This is absolutely central. This is signal, not noise. Esquire magazine, who is the vanguard of the left, very smart publication. They've got a brilliant article about it. You can see what the enemy thinks of this. I shouldn't say enemy, our fellow countrymen who disagree with us. How about that? And it's time to get focused on this. Phill Kline, you're doing the Lord's work. So thank you very much. By the way, Phill, how do we get to you? How do we get access to this? And folks, understand, we got a short-term contest. As we're going to talk about in a second, victory begets victory. We also got medium-term and longer-term plays. This one's incredibly important. You've got to get to your congressmen, got to get to your senators, got to let people know you're on the watchtower on this thing and not going to back off. Phill, what are your coordinates? Raheem, we've got to get this up today in the live chat. I want everybody reading Phil's article and other pieces that'll be coming around it. Phill, how do people get to you?
got-freedom, GOT-freedom.com.
Thank you, brother. Fantastic work.
Thank you.
Now I want to bring in victory begets victory. Remember, this is if Biden wanted to unify the country, first off, he wouldn't have had the Capitol or supported the Capitol being in total lockdown, the green zone. That story still ought to come out of why you had a green zone, why the nation's capital was in total lockdown during the inauguration, right? That's all going to come out, okay? But victory begets victory. Biden doesn't want unity. They want to power through their radical agenda. You've seen it from day one. We talked about the American Principles Project, what they've done to girls' sports, what they're doing with criminal illegal aliens, stopping the deportations, everything down on the border. This is a radical agenda. He's not looking out to reach out to any middle ground. But they're being stopped in their tracks. Everybody has to understand this is a massive victory. I want to bring in Mark Chmielenski from Numbers USA, which is one of the great organizations out there that really looks through about even-handed Chris Chmielenski from Numbers USA, one of the great organizations out there. Chris, we've had a major victory overnight, and this is inextricably linked with the filibuster and with Kristen Sinema, senator out in Arizona. Walk us through what happened last night. The biggest piece, their signature piece of legislation, delivered on Inauguration Day, even before their COVID-19 finance bill, the new interim financing, the $1.9 trillion, delivered in all its glory. They worked over the holidays on this. They worked over the transition, delivered it day one symbolically. Politico's reporting, if we can get that article up after Chris is on, I want everybody to see. They already said, you know what? I don't think this can go through. I don't think it can pass. We got to break it up in pieces. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a massive victory because of you, because of your support and going to your congressmen, going to your senators. Chris, tell us what happened overnight.
Yeah, so we've been hearing about this since, as you mentioned, for going on 2-3 weeks. That the Biden administration was their first day in office. They were going to introduce this immigration bill, and still we hadn't seen anything. And now we learn overnight that what they're going to do is they realized there's no way they can get to 60 votes if the bill is anything like the outline that they've publicly released. We still haven't seen legislative text, but we have seen an outline. We knew. But
hang on. I don't want to put this. I don't want to put this totally. Hang on. I don't want to put this totally on the filibuster of 60 votes. They couldn't get Manchin. They can't get Tester. They can't get Sinema. There are other
Correct.
Democrats. They can't. They know already. They've taken a head count. They can't get to their 50. That's why it's not. This is not about the filibuster. She's also a very savvy politician. She wants to be president one day. Write that down. She wants to be president. She's thinking strategically, and she understands in Arizona this thing would be a killer. This would also, in the Rio Grande Valley, Politico had yesterday, I want to get that piece up. The key to 2022, ladies and gentlemen, are those Hispanic-centric districts. Guess where? In the Rio Grande Valley, where we've been told you what Cortez said. These are all inextricably linked. Chris, this is why they're backing off. And what are they going to try to do now to try to slice and dice this?
Yeah, and I just want to add to that point real quick for a minute. I don't think they had the votes in the House either. They probably did a head count in the House and saw that they didn't have, because those middle ground Democrats, they saw what happened this past election. They didn't want to lose their seats over this bill. So what it looks like they're going to do is they're going to break it into smaller pieces. And you know, if you were reading the tea leaves, you could kind of anticipate that this was going to happen. Day one, Dick Durbin came to the Senate floor and said that he thought that the very first action on immigration should be passing the DREAM Act, not passing this monstrous comprehensive immigration reform bill. So, you know, again, they asked for, it was more of a political statement. This bill was not a serious attempt at reform. They were dismantling enforcement. They were offering amnesties to every single person who's in the country illegally. They were expanding legal immigration. It was a complete and utter sellout to the interest groups, to the big business groups, to the groups that rely on cheap foreign labor to keep their profits high and put downward pressure on Americans and their wages. So that's what this was all about. It was not a serious attempt at again, reforming immigration.
Okay, how can people get to you? How can our audience wants to know the details? They want to know the receipts, analysis of this bill, things going forward. As this gets broken up, they're going to try to do it by parts by executive order, parts by obviously statutory legislation, and we are allied. The key to this movement going forward is working class and middle class Hispanic families and working class and middle class African American families and Asian families. This is the Workers' Party. We will not allow this unleashing of cheap foreign labor, which, by the way, works to the detriment of those folks because they got to go off the economy, all of that. And it just drives down wages. It drives up unemployment. It drives down opportunities. The allies in this populist movement are working class Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley. That's why, and by the way, the buried lead in the political piece yesterday said one of the things they voted for Republicans and they voted for Trump was they liked the border security and jobs. Chris, this, ladies and gentlemen, although you say it's a political statement, trust me, this is like the fail on Obamacare reform under President Trump, but this happened in the first 5 days. This is a major victory begets victory. This is the way you stop it and reverse it. Chris, how do people get to you?
They can visit us at numbersusa.com. We've been following this for the last 2 weeks. So we got lots of content posted. And as we continue to learn more stuff, we're going to post more content. We're a grassroots organization. So we also post grassroots activism type opportunities for anybody that wants to join us. So if they visit us at numbersusa.com, if they're not already a member, just click on the green Join Us button on the top left. They can start receiving our emails.
Chris, thank you very much. Honored to have you on. Raheem,
Thanks for having me.
as you know, for the years of doing Brexit, you got to chip away at this thing, and you get stops. This is like football. We got to stop. Now, don't get me wrong. They're going to try to come at you from 10 different directions. The business interests are going to be aligned to this. You got radical stuff they're doing to these executive orders. But they did not back off. Their big signature piece of legislation was going to be amnesty, 25 million, anywhere from 11 to 25 million. Stop dead in its tracks.
Yeah, but again, you go back to and look at things like HR1. I mean, this has been in the works for 2.5 years minimum, right? So my concern is always that the right seems to kind of get a victory like this and then sort of sit back and go, okay, we got that one. We're going to move on to the next one. Actually, you've got to be vigilant on all things at all times. Because, yes, this will come back in several different forms at several different times. It may come back in a year. It may come back in 2 years in a more fuller form. For the time being, it's a good result. What I will say is that people should still be relentlessly calling, making sure their Republicans and their Democrat representatives know.
This is the beginning of this, and this is why this audience is on the watchtower. You're not here to be entertained. You're here to be energized and given information. Okay, we're going to have Matt Braynard next, talking about how we're going to go against the social media oligarchs. Braynard was the data guy in the 2016 campaign. Matt Braynard done great work on this election fraud. Matt Braynard next. War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The article on Politico said that Ron Kline and Jake Sullivan were going to be the tip of the spear in getting this amnesty bill all sort of broken down to pieces. Jake Sullivan better get on point on what the response is to President Xi's basically throw down or dismissal of the Biden administration yesterday. I still have only crickets. And Jen Psaki's response yesterday was amateurish.
What's Jen Psaki's most used word? That is correct.
I don't like picking.
I know you don't.
I don't like picking on her for that. I think that's noise, not signal. But here's what I think is signal. She doesn't say anything, and I think it's a disgrace. You've seen the mainstream media in all its glory with the softball questions they get asked, right? That's the signal. Signal is they don't want to touch it. And here's the thing. People have said these people are 20 feet high. They're not 20 feet high. It's a disorganized mess. And if it's confronted, it's going to shatter. And his approval ratings are going to have a 3 handle in front of it pretty shortly. You watch. It's a disorganized mess. Look, they just cratered on their biggest piece. This amnesty thing this is what they were selling people during the campaign. This is what they sold people in 2018. Hey, AOC's out today not denying she may not primary crying Chuck Schumer. Put that one down. Write that down, your number 2 pencil, and continue to follow that. She's not denying it. AOC is not denying that she might primary Chuck Schumer. And they're going to get a bellyful had they been played. Bernie's sitting up there with his mittens in the cold, look like a third quarter of a high school football game when your kids are down, your son's playing, and you're down 34-3, and only the parents are left. They got played. Yeah,
2 things.
I don't like picking on
I know you
that.
don't. Here's 2 things about
Firstly, stay classy.
Never. Firstly, you need to understand, you need to get in people's heads the same way Madeleine Peltz likes to get in people's heads. And that is one of the ways to get people's heads. She's blocked me on Twitter, and I'll never forgive her for it, the coward.
Stop picking on my marketing director.
Number 2.
If it wasn't for Madeleine Peltz, we'd be we wouldn't be the number 1 podcast in the world. Thank you, Madeleine.
Number 2.
And don't be so snarky. Yes, I don't read I don't read any Twitter, but they give me your tweets when you're lighting us up. But Madeleine, don't take offense. You're still marketing director.
Exactly.
I'm not going to let Raheem pick on
me.
you.
I really miss you. And number 2, is a metaphor, right, for what she's up there saying, because she isn't saying stuff. She isn't answering the questions. She's getting lit up by Ducey. She's getting lit up, but she was lit up by Emerald Robinson yesterday over
I wouldn't say Ducey's up. He didn't light her up. No.
I don't know.
I think it's another.
He cornered her. She didn't answer the question.
That's another noise question. That's signal.
She didn't answer the question, and she didn't answer Emerald Robinson's question about the power grid executive order that Biden put out a couple of days ago. Had no answer to it.
Yeah.
Psaki is on the
This
back
is
foot.
allowing Chinese back into the power grid.
I said the first week when Spicer was up there at the podium, I said he's not going to last because he's on the back foot all the time. I'm seeing the same thing from Psaki. They're going to pull her.
By the way, I do agree with that. She's got to step her game up. But the reason her game's not stepped up is not her personally and her demeanor. That's what the reason is. They got nothing, right? They got nothing. All you people out there that were in the fetal position, they're 30 feet high. They're not 30 feet high. This is command by negation. Hammer, hammer, hammer. By the way, where they want to unify and the Buy American stuff, we're going to have Navarro on hopefully tonight. I'm going to talk some of the Buy American stuff. We absolutely agree with. Anything is about bringing jobs back here to this country, we absolutely agree with. But I haven't done enough details of the EOs. Navarro, it's his specialty, and I'm heckling him to come through. Okay, well, let's go to Matt Braynard. Matt was the data coordinator, the head of data for the 16 campaign. He's executive director of Look Ahead America, which is a bunch of former 16 people that have done a great job on the on fighting this the illegality and illegitimacy of this election by the numbers, by the data. Matt, just before I get to your new endeavor, and Raheem's going to jump in here, I just got to ask you, President Trump looks like obviously now he's got a strategy to kind of get through this impeachment trial, although the Democrats, I think, are going to try to light him up by arguing aspects of the Constitution, due process, etc. You did much of the research for many of the states and looked at this. Do you think there's enough evidence out there that if President Trump wanted to do a full-throated defense of his actions from the 4th of November, that you'd actually have the evidence that you could put in, the 3,000 affidavits? Professor Clements of New Mexico State University tells us at least 500 of those affidavits he thinks are at a level they could be presented as evidence. What would you say? What would you recommend to the president?
Well, the evidence that we found with our voter integrity project is very clear, and I've been very consistent in my language here. I believe that the number of illegal ballots surpassed the margin of victory in the states of Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona. And right now my team is actually fortifying those results. We never got a day in court to present. So we're fortifying our results, double checking them, and going to be releasing them in Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona in succession to demonstrate that this is in fact what happened. And we'd invite the president or anybody else to make use of this data in his defense at the impeachment trial or anywhere else.
Give me those 3 states again. I want people to focus. Give me those 3 states.
Well, it's important which ones they are. It's Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona. And without those 3 states in this column, Joe Biden is not president. Because we get a tie in the Electoral College and it goes to the House.
Yeah. I realize you're supposed to be a lawyer. You got to do your math. It's 3 states, and those are the 3 states: Georgia, Wisconsin, and I would start with Wisconsin, give them 3 days of that. I would then go to Georgia, give them 3 or 4 days of that, and then finish with Wisconsin. And I'd throw in a couple of days on Nevada and Michigan and Wisconsin just to get it out. And you never have to talk about a machine.
Right. There were a lot of bizarre anomalies in all these states. Like we're not even counting as, say, illegal ballots, but when you have a significant percentage of the population receiving absentee ballots they never requested in states where they were required to request them themselves. You could not have them requested on your behalf by a stranger, which is what appears to have happened. Yeah. There's some tremendous problems.
This is still in the legal process. It's in Maricopa County. It's all over the place. This must get adjudicated. I want to pivot now, though, to your new effort. Tell us about what Look Ahead America, and particularly all this aspect of social media that Raheem's been all over at National Pulse. What is the threat, and specifically, what are you going to do about it?
Right. So Look Ahead America was originally started and continues with the mission of registering, educating, and turning out to vote disaffected patriotic Americans, because there's millions of them out there. We just need to reach them. However, we've expanded into these things we're calling Patriot Actions. Now, if you look across the country at places where patriots or conservatives still have strength, you don't see a whole lot of it in Washington, D.C., but where you do find a lot of it are in state legislatures. And what we're trying to do is leverage where we have power, leverage where we have influence. And in many of those state legislatures, those are avenues for us to advance our agenda. And one of the things we want to do is establish free speech states. These are states which will pass legislation that prevents the state government or any subordinate government, like a county government, a city, or a town, from engaging in business with many of the firms out there that are censoring people, deplatforming people, delisting people for engaging in legal speech, constitutionally protected political activity, or just gainful employment. So it starts off by looking at some, Facebook or a Twitter and saying that, look, the state government's no longer going to do any marketing with your company. We're not going to spend any more money on ads. It looks at a company like Amazon and says, we're not going to give you any more contracts for managing our government services. It looks at financial institutions that have been delisting people for political activity or because they maybe run a legal business like a firearms manufacturer and canceling their accounts. We're not going to transact any more business with you. And what that's just going to do is necessitate one of two responses from these companies. Either they're going to relent and respect people's First Amendment rights to free expression, or they're going to say, we're not interested in doing business with your state anymore, creating a space for new companies in the technology field, in social media, and financial institutions who do embrace the First Amendment to get that business. And that becomes the seed money for creating a new ecosystem of businesses that embrace and are not censoring and are friendly towards the freedom of expression.
So, Matt, any take up right now at a local level, at a state level, any conversations that you're having that are at an advanced stage on this stuff? Who's showing interest, and where can we expect to see, the first, free speech state?
Well, we are starting from scratch with this. We announced this earlier this week because we believe it's a vital issue. We want to talk about voter integrity and other kinds of reforms, but it's hard to do that when all of these companies are censoring you for just bringing up the subject. So we're actually doing our first grassroots activist training on Wednesday night. It's online, it's free to anybody who wants to participate, and you can find out about it at lookaheadamerica.org/speech. So we're going to be training activists to go into their state capitals. We're going to be organizing them and giving them the lessons, what they need to know to be able to do that. So far, though, I will say that Florida has taken the lead because they've already begun divesting from these companies that censor legal speech.
You have Paxson, and Abbott in Texas, and you have the whole country's California and New York. They're all flooding into Florida and Texas. Why? These are states run by adults, right? This is states run by adults. Real quickly, I want to go back to Wednesday night. We've got the biggest audience. By the way, not just people in the United States. If you want to learn about it and you're in another country, I want you to go in and sign up too, right? This is a global movement. Doesn't mean just if you're obviously in the United States, we want you in there, but we also want other people if you just want to sit there and learn. Matt, tell us again, what are people going to learn? What time is it, and how do they get to it?
They're going to learn how to become a grassroots lobbyist. Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, Facebook, they spend millions of dollars on professional lobbyists, but no one has the impact of a constituent walking to their state senator or state legislator's office and saying, this is important to me. So this is going to run from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday night. You can register at lookaheadamerica.org/speech, and we'll be doing these constantly. This is just the first of many.
Matt Braynard, what are your coordinates what are your social media coordinates? People can get to you, find out what you're doing during the day.
I'm on everything, Gab, MeWe, Twitter, Facebook. Just find me at Matt Braynard.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Okay, we started off today very specifically with Phill, Kline, Chmielenski, and Matt Braynard. Why? This is all about action, action, action. We're going to give you the big picture, right? But we're also going to get down to the deck plates. This is what populism is. They cannot defeat you. They cannot defeat you. They cannot beat you if you're on the watchtower, right? And we had Phill Kline with this HR1 about voter integrity, also the short-term fight. Chris came on in Numbers USA, one of the number groups, to talk about the amnesty bill, talk about legislation, how you can get engaged. Also Matt Braynard now talking about how you take on the tech oligarchs. He says the reason you hear crickets here in Washington, D.C., understand something. They hire all the law firms, all the best law firms, so there's a conflict of interest. Then they have their PAC. Everybody's taking money. That's when they go up to the Hill for these hearings. It's all softball questions. They've got money into everybody. Here's who they don't have money into: you. This is what populism is. Raheem said the other day, this is the grind, okay? But the grind is what's going to win. One thing I admire the left about, they know how to grind. They are grassroots oriented. They can activate people. They get people out there. We got to combat that with our own grind. And we have people out there and people in the live chat, people on hashtag War and Pandemic. Raheem, you've seen this. This is how Brexit got done.
Right.
This is why Brexit and the Trump revolution. Nigel Farage, I went around and followed him I think in 14. It was like the Tea Party movement. They're in all these little meetings, 20 people showing up, 15 people showing up, talking to a crowd of 40 people. Yeah. You grind it for years and years and years, and the United Kingdom is free. They're free. right? Not perfect.
And with some amazing GDP forecasts that came out this morning, by the way. Brexit Britain's going to be thriving in the next couple of years, better than Germany, I will add. There's one thing I think we need to consider about all of this as well. I'll come to it after the break, and it's to do with Section 230. We'll come to that after the break, very important. But I also want to say to people this. Look at how the left deplatforms us. Look at how they get these things done. It's because they wake up, they pour their cup of soy milk coffee, and they grind. They make calls all day. They send emails all day. That's all they do.
You're a force multiplier. Okay, we're going to come back. Victory begets victory. And we just had a massive win today. First off, the filibuster, but more importantly, they didn't have the votes on the amnesty bill on the Democratic side. They understood they would lose all these House seats. Done. Be back in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
And then we'll come to you, sir. Go ahead. Thanks, Jen. In an executive order that the president signed last week, he also suspended a Trump administration executive order that was particularly aimed at keeping foreign countries, specifically China, from interfering in the U.S. power grid. But he suspended that for 90 days in that executive order last week. Given what you said about China today, why did he do that, especially related to something so critical to our national security as the power grid?
I think the president's view on our relationship with China, I tried to do my best to convey to all of you. I'll have to check on that specific piece, and we'll circle back with you directly.
That's a full face plant. No, you can't come up that prepared. This is a major deal.
Yes.
What are you doing in prep? And the mainstream media continue to say she's so great. She's atrocious. But I'd like having her up there because she's just stumbling through things, and it's not about her. She's got a nervous tick. And they're already inside of her head. You can tell this. As a public speaker, she's got a nervous tick, which is Somebody did a compilation last night. I thought it was a little unfair.
Don't worry, I'll be playing at 3 p.m.
I thought it was
like
a little unfair. But more importantly, she doesn't. The whole thing with, we're going to have strategic patience. Yeah, that worked out well for Central Europe and Europe under Neville Chamberlain, right, in the British. The strategic patience. That worked. Appeasement. Right. That strategic patience is appeasement. He's going to be very patient. She didn't answer the question. She didn't even know, because if you had any inkling of what it was, you could at least spun it for 60 seconds. She had no clue what Emerald Robinson was talking about. Emerald Robinson, kudos to you. Mm-hmm. That's a hammer question, an important question. Why did he do it? Basic, not a trick question. Hey, he did this, part of the whole China thing. She just throws down. Why don't we talk about here in the power grid, which we've had this thing with EMP and the whole situation of the power grid, the nervousness on the power grid, whether bad actors can come in with DDoS attacks and others will take control of it to shut it down. Complete airball by the White House. And this is not noise, which her nervous tick is, I think. What it is that, number one, they're not organized. Number two, they don't really have a strategy. They're not 30 feet tall. They're not 30 feet tall. They're the world's tallest midget right now, right? They're not 30 feet tall, and that's why people have to hammer them. And this is where they're not trying to unify. This is where they're putting the country in jeopardy from a national security basis. Emerald Robinson, keep hammering Raheem Kassam.
Well, we've seen Orange Man bad. We're now seeing Orange Woman bad at her job. And I do think that Jen Psaki is not long for that podium, quite frankly. She's not handling herself well. She's panicking even at softball questions from her friends in the media, let alone a medium ball question from Emerald Robinson. Emerald Robinson wasn't targeting an attack on Jen Psaki there. She just said, why? Why did he do it? And she did not even know what she was talking about.
She had not read. This was about the prep, which Spice and these guys did. She didn't even know about the executive order. That's a scary thing. Also shows you how they're just ripping through stuff. Okay, I want to go back to Matt Braynard and what we're talking about. This is your area of expertise. You're still concerned about this. What's your concern?
Well, look, I think my thing is I always try and think the way the other side thinks.
Yeah.
People often ask me, well, why do you read Esquire? Why do we have CNN on the televisions? Because I'm trying to get
know thy enemy
in their mindset and understand the way they work. Why do I hang out at Morton's and listen to all these lobbyists talking all day long, right? So here's what's going to happen. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
So weak.
All right?
So weak.
At least I have an answer, unlike Jen Psaki. We're going to go through this. Pay very close attention, because what Matt Braynard was talking about with these free speech states and subsidy from government and the collaboration with these big tech organizations, institutions, corporates, effectively. But think about this. Twitter launched this thing yesterday called Birdwatch. Birdwatch. The idea of Birdwatch is it's a community-driven moderation, i.e., the hive mind, the Borg, takes care of all of the thoughts on Twitter that aren't supposed to be in there. So remember, first they've taken thousands upon thousands of conservatives off the platform, and then they give moderation to the majority of the people that they've left on the platform. So we know who they've given moderation power to. Then Section 230 protects them against lawsuits for whatever. But if Section 230 is repealed, which I think it should be, but if Section 230 is repealed, then they have to account for their editorial decisions. However, that doesn't apply, or it can really be pushed back on if they can say, well, we didn't edit this. So the community moderated
this. Okay, but let's assume this town is too bought and paid for to repeal it. How do you do it at the state level?
Well, you absolutely do it at the state level in the very same way that Matt Braynard's talking about, right? And actually European countries, and indeed the European Union, so one of the things the European Union has done well over the last couple of years is taking the fight to the monopoly and oligopoly powers of big tech. Poland, for instance, is going after big tech companies who censor people. They are fining them for doing that. They are hauling them in front of courts and fining them if they cannot give a reasonable explanation for why they have taken somebody offline. They understand that the digital public square is as real and important as the real life public square nowadays. So you can do that on a state level. But what I'm trying to get people to think about here is Birdwatch isn't just a way for them to enhance moderation by other people and get you spying on your neighbors and all that kind of thing. It's also a way around being called an editor and being called a publisher.
Birdwatch is the life of others, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
A little bit, because it's a continual spying on you. That's what I'm saying.
Of course, it's the circular spying.
Talk
thing.
about life of others. Why is that so
important? The lives of others. Yeah, the Leben der anderen. I think in German. I stopped learning German, I think, at the age of 11. This is the circular spying unit, and you're also seeing that already right now. I think was it Brandon Stark who was arrested? And I think it was one of his family members that actually ratted him out. This is what they've been calling for, and this is what's happening right now. And it's in Chapter 1 of the Gulag Archipelago. I will keep banging on about that. You want to learn the way this stuff works. It's all there in print. It's been done in human history before.
Let's put that in. I want to put that into the live chat, that opening pages you gave us last night on the internal team thing. Also, there's a young boy that turned his dad in. Right.
Yep.
Now he's got regrets.
With the Hello Kitty.
He said, "Oh, I think I did it for the best." Yes, absolutely. Brandon was turned in, I believe, by a family member.
Yep.
Right. So it's the lives of others, where they got everybody spying on each other. Okay, we're gonna take a short commercial break. When we come back at the top of the next hour, we're gonna get into the Biden Unauthorized, the book. Yesterday, the author, Mike McCormick, what kind of blew up on the internet, said that he thinks that he's been up close and personal for 9 years. He thinks Biden is at 50%. Cognitive ability right now. We've asked him to back that up and give us some specific examples. Also, we want to talk about China, the pressure cooker of China and President Xi. Can you actually see Joe Biden in the same room as Donald Trump was when Donald Trump was bench pressing President Xi? Okay, all next. Got a big second hour. Want everybody to hang in there. Want everybody in the live chat. Tell us what you think. Be back in a minute.